Buddy. Special thanks to John Katz and Moshe Margolin of the Adult Ed Committee, to Ronnie Garrison in the front office, who was gatekeeper for letting everybody in tonight, and hope that went smoothly. I am delighted to welcome back Rajan Narayanaswamy, who is going to be speaking to us tonight about Hindu faith and culture. And just very briefly, Hinduism is one of the world's oldest religions, and according to many scholars, it has roots and customs dating back 4,000 years. Today, with about 900 million followers, it's considered the world's third largest religion behind Christianity and Islam. Roughly 95% of the world's Hindus live in India. Because the religion has no specific founder, it's difficult to trace its origins and history. Hinduism is unique in that it's not a single religion, but a compilation of many traditions and philosophies. So tonight we're thrilled to welcome back Rajan, who has a PhD in physics and is a very active and prominent member of the Chinmaya Mission, a renowned spiritual institution just up the road in Cranberry. Without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome him back. I will be controlling the chat. I should say that. So send your questions that way. I will do my best to get all of them to Rajan. He has very, very generously agreed to make his email available, and you'll see it on his presentation for any questions that we cannot get to tonight. Take it away, Rajan.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you, John, and thank you everybody for being here. I'm super excited to be here today. Today's talk, as I had mentioned in my first talk, is going to go a little deeper into Hinduism. And I was very happy with the interest that was shown in the last talk. And I'm thankful to all of you for that. And I hope you'll enjoy today's talk as well. So I'm going to straight away jump into my presentation. Can everybody see it? Okay, very good. And there's my email address. If you don't want to forget it, just remember James Bond. And you can also find this email just by typing my name on the internet and typing yoga or something. You'll find my websites where there'll be a contact link. Okay. So since we don't have much time, I want to cover a lot of things today, and I want to move a little faster so that we can cover a lot of things. So I'll just tell you the basic format of this. I had mentioned this. Today's talk will go into a detailed treatment of two topics from Hinduism, Vedanta and the Bhagavad-Gita. And I will be doing meditation, which I call expanded awareness meditation. Last time I had done the Swadhisthana Chakra meditation, which was more focused on the body and mind. The expanded awareness tries to step into a different realm altogether. And I will explain this meditation before we do it. And the Q&A will be not just at the end. I thought that after I finish with the Bhagavad Gita, I will open up for questions on the Bhagavad Gita also. So these are some of the older slides. I'm just going to skip through these and get to here. Last time had tried to explain all these things at a 50,000 feet level because there are too many petals on this lotus. And the two that I'm picking for this class is the Vedanta and Bhagavad-Gita, which are very big topics in themselves and very wide, and lot of information is there in these two topics. And I'm going to go into them today. Those were the 4 paths I talked about in the last class. We may come back to this if needed. But let me move on straight away to the introduction to Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta. What is the Bhagavad Gita? The Bhagavad Gita appears in the middle of the epic Mahabharata. I had mentioned this, the 2 big epics. Mahabharata is the very complicated story having so many types of characters. In the middle of the Mahabharata appears the Bhagavad Gita, and I will tell you the background of the Bhagavad Gita, how it came to be in the Mahabharata, and what is its relevance to the overall story of the Mahabharata. It's important to understand that. The Bhagavad Gita is basically a dialogue between Arjuna, the greatest archer, the greatest living archer of the time, and Lord Krishna, who gives him advice. It's a very practical advice to use in all walks of life. The path of Karma Yoga is exposed in detail. If you remember, I had mentioned one of the 4 paths, one of them is Karma Yoga. I will go into details of Karma Yoga. The movie, The Legend of Bagger Vance, starring Matt Damon and Will Smith, is based on Karma Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita. Even the names are chosen like that. Bagger Vance refers to Bhagavan, which is one way of addressing Lord Krishna. And Matt Damon has the name of Juna in the movie, which rhymes with Arjuna. And if you have not seen the movie, you should definitely see it. It shows you a lot of Karma Yoga principles, how a golfer comes back and wins the championship, following some of these beautiful advice of Will Smith, who is representing Lord Krishna here. Vedanta is the ultimate and final teachings of the Hindu religion. You can call it the PhD level of Hindu religion. Vedanta basically means end of the Vedas, or conclusion of the Vedas, or final statement of the Vedas. The content of Vedanta lies in the Upanishads, which are the philosophical part or knowledge part of the Vedas. The Vedas are 4 in number. I had mentioned it in the first talk. A portion of the Veda is the philosophical part, or what is called the knowledge part, and they are called the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the basis of Vedanta. The Upanishads are known to number more than 100. Some people say 200 in number also. But 10 Upanishads are considered to be the primary ones. In the Chinmaya mission, everybody who has been here for many years is focused on studying the Upanishads in great detail. Our Swamiji gives lots of talks on these Upanishads. Right now, if you go to our website, you'll see Prashna Upanishad. He's giving talks on that. And I just want to mention the concept of God in the Upanishads. God in Upanishads is not the bearded person sitting on a throne. It is a higher intelligence, or what we'll call Satchidananda, or existence, consciousness, bliss. I'm not going to go into that topic of God in the Upanishads, but we will indirectly touch it when we deal with the actual Upanishad. Okay, let's move on. These are some of the quotes on the Bhagavad Gita. The first one, when Mahatma Gandhi, when doubts haunt me, when disappointments stare me in the face and I see not one ray of hope, I turn to the Bhagavad Gita and find a verse to comfort me. and I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming sorrow. Ralph Waldo Emerson, I owed a magnificent day to the Bhagavad Gita. It was the first of books. It was as if an empire spoke to us. Nothing small or unworthy, but large, serene, consistent. The voice of an old intelligence, which in another age and climate had pondered and thus disposed of the same questions which exercise us. Henry David Thoreau, the writer of Walden Pond. In the morning, I bathed my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial. Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst, the idea that man is like unto an inverted tree seems to have been current in bygone ages. The link with Vedic conceptions is provided by Plato in his Timaeus, in which he states, "Behold, we are not an earthly, but a heavenly plant." This correlation can be discerned by what Krishna expresses in chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. So these are some beautiful words. So let's get to Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is very vast. There are 18 chapters. And if there is one book that covers all of Hinduism in a very practical way, it is the Bhagavad Gita. It is considered by many to be the most important single book for Hindus. A large portion of Bhagavad Gita is what is called Karma Yoga. And it deals with it in great detail. About 3 chapters of this book deal with Karma Yoga. And it's sprinkled all over the other chapters too. So I have time only to go through one aspect of Bhagavad Gita. And so I will go into detail into Karma Yoga, because Karma Yoga is used a lot, the teachings in management school. Our own Swamiji takes a course in Seton Hall University on the Bhagavad Gita, and it is used extensively in the corporate world today. And I will touch some of those topics also if I get time. I may not get time to go into the full faculty of management school where they use Bhagavad Gita, but some of these things will become obvious once I start dealing with what Karma Yoga is all about. So let me first lay this background for this. I told you this is in the middle of the Mahabharata. So what happens in the Mahabharata is this. There are 2 sets of brothers, you can say, cousins. One of them is headed by a prince called Duryodhana. He's the evil prince. And the other cousins are Pandavas, who are 5 in number, and they are the good cousins. So it's a story of good versus evil. And Arjuna is one of those 5, the 5 good ones. And the oldest there is called Yudhishthira. So what happens is they are always inimical to each other, mainly because of Duryodhana, the evil prince. And one day what happens is Duryodhana brings them into a gambling game with an uncle who has a tricky set of dice. He's a magical person. He can throw the dice any way he wants, and they win everything of the Pandavas. The Pandavas lose everything in the gambling, including themselves. They themselves become slaves to Duryodhana. And as a result of that, Duryodhana orders them to go away to the forest for 13 years because they are his slaves. So he just orders them and they go. And he says that after 13 years, when you come back, you will get your kingdom back. But when they come back, he says, you don't get your kingdom back. And they say that at least give us a small village. We don't want any kingdom. We just want a small village where we can live peacefully. He says, no, I will not give you even 1 inch of land. And then it comes to a state where they have to fight for their kingdom. And that's how the Mahabharata war, which is called the Kurukshetra war. The battlefield of Kurukshetra still exists in India. There is a railway station called Kurukshetra, and the actual battlefield is there. So what happens? The despondency of Arjuna. So Arjuna has Lord Krishna as his charioteer. Lord Krishna is driving the chariot of Arjuna. And before the war begins, it's just about to begin, Krishna takes Arjuna in the chariot to the enemy lines, brings him in front of the enemy and says, okay, time to fight now. And Arjuna looks at the enemy, and what does he see? He sees his cousins with whom he played in childhood. He sees his own teacher on the other side who taught him archery. And he sees his great-grandfather, who is another big warrior, standing on the other side. And he says to Krishna, how can I kill these people? Arjuna knows that he can kill all of them. He's the greatest warrior. But he doesn't want to kill these people. He throws down his bow and arrows, and puts his hand on his head and just loses it completely. He says, I cannot fight. And that is the time when Lord Krishna starts giving him the advice that he cannot run away from this war. And that is the statement of Karma Yoga. So that is the scene in which the Bhagavad Gita is delivered to Arjuna by Lord Krishna. So the first thing, basically Karma Yoga tells us how to live and act in this world. That's what Karma Yoga is all about. There are 4 main aspects to Karma Yoga, and there are many smaller aspects too, but the 4 main aspects, I will just explain these 4 main aspects. First one, and I also am mentioning the chapter and the verse wherever possible. So if somebody wants to look it up, they can read from there on. Get up and fight. So he tells Arjuna that right now your duty is that of a warrior, and you're fighting for your king, who is his eldest brother, and your duty is to fight. You cannot complain anything. You just have to do your job now. This is the first, in chapter 2, he starts this. Then, this is the famous verse from Bhagavad-Gita, Karmanyeva adhikaraste, ma phaleshu kadachana. Focus on your work. You have no control on the results. This is one of the greatest teachings of Bhagavad-Gita on chapter 2, verse 47. It's a very controversial statement. Some people have a problem to accept this and understand this. But we have to understand what this actually means. What this basically means is that we often cannot control the results of our actions because there are a lot of factors which are outside our control. In anything that we do, we may not have full control on the results. So focus on the work, do the best work you can, and hope for the best results. But it may not happen. Don't be disappointed if it doesn't happen, because there are a lot of factors which control the results. And I know if you just think a little bit, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. There are situations in the workplace, for example, some people work hard, they don't get a promotion. Now, what does it mean? It means that you definitely go and talk to your manager and say, I think I deserve a promotion because I did this. I generated so much revenue for the company and I achieved all these jobs. In spite of that, it's possible that you may not get a promotion. Do whatever action you have to take to succeed, but be ready for the results even after that. The main advice here is don't get into depression or sadness because you're not getting the results of your work. Focus on your work and the results will come, maybe after some time, maybe with a delay, but it'll come. But your job is to focus on the work. The best example of this is that of a tennis player like Roger Federer. If you watch any tennis player, where are they focusing? They're focusing on the ball and their eyes don't leave the ball. And that is what gives him the success. Focus on the work. By focusing on work, you will become more and more skillful, and a time will come when the results will start coming automatically because people cannot ignore your skill level. But if you are always worrying about the results, you never develop your skills. So that is what this is talking about. Focus on your work. Third aspect of Karma Yoga is in chapter 3, verse 21. Very famous verse again. Yad yad acharati shreshtaha. You need to act wisely and effectively because many others are looking up to you. So Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that, listen, you are the greatest warrior in the world today. If you walk away from the battlefield, do you know what will happen? 20,000 more people are going to walk away from the battlefield because they are looking up to you. And therefore, it's your duty to fight because they are depending on you. Now, this is a beautiful lesson for everybody. And we should be teaching this to our children because many times our children start to develop low self-esteem problems, many of them. And this tells them that somebody is looking up even to you. Even if you think that you're nothing, somebody, maybe a cousin living in some other state or in some other country, is not doing so well as you are doing in America, is looking up to you and hopes that you will do well and set an example. So don't disappoint them. So however low you feel, you are important for somebody in this world. So this is another beautiful lesson. Now, all these are somehow translated into management teachings also. If I get time, I will just go into one or two. And the last one is a little intriguing. This is called actionless action, and it steps into a different realm itself of Karma Yoga. This is the last stage of Karma Yoga. Chapter 4, verse 17 mentions this. A lot of other verses also mention this. This is a big topic in Karma Yoga of Bhagavad-Gita. Let me try and explain this. And let's see if we can get this. You can ask questions later about this. What is actionless action? This is talking about a way of living or a way of acting in this world as if it is not you that is acting, but it is the higher power or God acting through you. You know, Mother Teresa, the Nobel Prize winner who used to be in the city of Calcutta, was asked once that, what gives you the motivation to serve these poor people who are on the streets? She said, I see Jesus Christ in each one of them. So I'm basically serving Jesus Christ. See, that's a different look, that's a different way of acting in the world. So the state of actionless action is when, and it's not an artificial state where you're trying to you can't make this up. You have to really live this. It's a way of living which is you surrender to God and say, just guide me in everything I do. And your intellect is now connected to a higher intellect which is guiding you in everything. And it's a real way of living in which you start living in a much more intelligent way. Dr. Deepak Chopra used a term. He said, we are not in the days of Charles Darwin where survival of the fittest was important. It is survival of the wisest now that is important. So this is the survival of the wisest. When you surrender to a higher intellect, it somehow guides your actions. And this is a real practical thing. If you actually practice this, you will see that you get hidden guidance for your actions and you don't screw up in life, to put it bluntly. You somehow find that your decisions somehow are turning out to be better than before when you surrender to a higher power or higher energy. And this is the final teaching of Karma Yoga, a way of living which is actionless action. And here comes the concept of surrender that I mentioned. What is surrender? We can understand by two examples. One example of surrender is when you get on a plane from Newark Airport and you're flying to Atlanta, you surrender to the pilot basically. Because if something goes wrong, can you do anything? We just had an incident you saw a few days back. Engine caught fire. Let's say somebody says, oh, here is the cockpit. Go and can you fix this problem? We don't have a single clue which button to press. We surrender to the pilot when we are in the plane. One more example, when you're on the operating table, you surrender to the surgeon because you have complete trust in the surgeon. You get anesthesia and you're out completely, and you're completely trusting that the surgeon knows what he's doing. So we do surrender in life. Surrendering to God is actionless action. It's an act of highest faith. I know every religion in the world is based on faith. And this is the actionless action is an act of faith where you start believing in the higher power and intellect to guide you. And it's a real thing. So the sages tell us. So those are the four aspects. One thing about Bhagavad-Gita and the whole scriptures of Hinduism is it is not a system of rules, but rather a system of advice. And at the very end of Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 18, which is the last chapter, almost near the end, verse 63, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna that I am giving you all this advice, ponder over it, and do as per your decision. This is the attitude that is taken by the scriptures of Hinduism, is always something for you yourself to explore. It tells you to explore it yourself. Don't believe anything. Try it out and see yourself. And the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, I want to specifically mention this because this last verse, the 706th verse of Bhagavad Gita, explains the whole of Hindu teachings in one verse. It's a very famous verse. We in the Chinmaya mission, whenever we do anything related to Bhagavad Gita or certain functions that we have, this verse is always chanted at the end. because it's so important. And our Swami Chinmayananda, the founder of Chinmaya Mission, has given a beautiful talk on this last verse. You can, if you search on YouTube, last verse of Bhagavad Gita, Swami Chinmayananda, you'll find it. I will just explain the gist of this last verse. And I will just say this verse once. It goes like this. Yet then this last verse is not spoken by Lord Krishna, incidentally. It is spoken by Sanjaya, who is the narrator of Bhagavad Gita. So he says, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishnaha, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, Tratra Shri Vijayo Bhutihi, Dhruva Nitirmatir Mama. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, wherever there are the noble values of Lord Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, and where there is somebody like Arjuna willing to act in this world, not some lazy person. Wherever there are the noble values of Krishna and there is the intention and readiness to act in the world, Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutihi, there shall be victory. Dhruva Nitirmatir Mama, and there will be good policy and prosperity. This is the beautiful teaching of Bhagavad Gita, that it is not just about prayers and devotion and spirituality. It is also about readiness to act, but act with the values that Krishna teaches, but act with the courage and determination of Arjuna, as he did at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. When you combine compassion, kindness, non-violence, love, when you act with these noble values, then there shall be victory and prosperity and good policy. So this is the ultimate teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, the last verse. So at this point, I will pause if there are any questions about Bhagavad Gita before I move on to Vedanta. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Thanks so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'll just stop the share for a second.
Okay. So yeah, we had a series of questions come in. Rajan, when was the Bhagavad Gita written? And do we know who wrote it?
Yes. Yeah. So it's about, see, the times differ in estimate from 5,000 to 10,000 years. Okay. Back. And the Bhagavad Gita is written by the same person who wrote Mahabharata, who is called Veda Vyasa. He's one of the great sages of those days. He's called Vyasa. He's called Veda Vyasa because he wrote the Vedas as well. So he is the author of Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. Thank you. And then, is Hinduism considered a monotheistic religion?
Neither. It is, there is no theism in Hinduism because there is no God as such. There is no God figure. And the supreme statement of Hinduism is Tattvamasi, which means you are that. That means you are the highest, actually. And the God of, this topic to go into, I had mentioned the God in Upanishads. It is the highest teaching of Hinduism is the God of the Upanishads, which is Brahman, whose nature is Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, and bliss. This is the true God of Hinduism. So the other gods that you see, like Shiva or Vishnu or Brahma, these are all the effect of Maya on Brahman. Maya is the illusionary power. So when Maya acts on Brahman, which is the pure consciousness, then it produces the gods. So even the highest gods are produced by the effect of Maya. So the highest is Satchidananda. Existence, consciousness, bliss means it has the quality of existence. I'm using the word quality because there is no other English word to use.
Mhm.
It has the attribute of existence. That means Brahman exists. It has the quality of consciousness. That means it is conscious of things. Just like we are conscious. Right now, you're conscious of me talking.
Mhm.
It is the same consciousness that we have borrowed from the original consciousness, and it is just manifesting as us. It is a manifestation of the same consciousness in the form of human beings, or as a mouse, or as a anything. It is the same consciousness. So there's only one consciousness. And
Mhm.
Ananda, whose nature is bliss. That means it only knows happiness, nothing else. Everything else which is not happiness, like sadness or problems, is all is a manifestation of that. The manifestation can have problems, but not the original. So the whole goal of Vedanta and Hinduism is to realize that you yourself are the nature of existence, consciousness, bliss. So we are not trying to find God. We ourselves are God. That is the teaching of Hinduism.
Interesting.
So
Mhm.
the concept of monotheism doesn't come into the picture at all. It doesn't
Right.
apply actually.
So the idea is that God exists in us, in the individual.
Little more than that. We are God.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So here's another question. You talked about the Bhagavad Gita, really about that's the story of a battle. And so one question was, we think of Hinduism as celebrating or promoting nonviolence. So how do you reconcile the idea of the warrior being romanticized in the story with nonviolence?
Very good. Good question. Beautiful question. So there is something called dharmic war. So when you're fighting for the rights of somebody, then it's not considered violence. It is considered a dharmic war, because if you don't fight, then bigger violence happens as a result of that. So it is something like when a doctor does a surgery for you, it is not considered a violent act, right? Because although he's cutting you open, it is not violence, because it is ultimately it does good for you. So this is called a dharmic war. Non-violence refers to wanton violence. When violence is done with no purpose for some personal benefit, for example, killing an otter to make a purse is violence. It comes under the edict of non-violence. But if it is a war, if it's a just war,
Mhm.
it's perfectly okay, because you're trying to save something bigger. I hope that explained it somewhat.
Okay. Well, Um, and then, oh, here's a question. And obviously, this is an ancient text. In the Jewish tradition, there are many later interpretations, like of the Torah. There's the Talmud, for example, the Mishnah, the Gemara. Are there also written interpretations of the Bhagavad Gita that come after it was written?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, around 1200 years ago, there was a great saint by the name of Shankaracharya. He wrote, uh, he's the most prolific writer on who commented on all these scriptures, including the Vedas. In fact, he's almost the very first person to write. So he wrote the interpretations of all these things, because some of these things were not, it was not available to the public, to the people, because it is a very high teaching, which is difficult to understand. You need to know the language very well and all that. So Shankaracharya wrote commentaries on all these, and his commentaries are used today by all the teachers, including Chinmaya Mission uses Shankaracharya's commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, on the Upanishads. He's the one who picked the 10 big Upanishads out of the hundreds I mentioned.
Mhm.
And yes, so he's the most important person. But he did not twist the meaning or anything. He just interpreted it, uh, tried to bring it down to a little lower level for people to understand and propagate this knowledge.
Mhm.
But it's a very old teaching. I had mentioned the word Shruti. Even before all these things were written, this knowledge was available in the form of teacher to disciple instruction, but no written word.
Mhm. So here's another question that just came in. You mentioned that Shankaracharya was a saint. What does sainthood mean in Hinduism?
Okay. Sainthood is explained by the word sannyasi. So sannyasi is a person who gives up everything, all possessions, and he or she lives off the sympathy of others. So they don't possess anything. They just possess one piece of cloth or two pieces of cloth, and they just go around asking for food, and they don't have a house, they don't have a car, they just go around wherever they find the tree. They will sleep under the tree. They will find a temple, they will go and sleep in that temple. They will go to a village and stay there for 15 days and give talks there, and somebody would feed them. That is the life of a saint. And they have they have only one goal, is to keep pursuing the spiritual path, the practices of spirituality, and to propagate this to the people, and always work towards helping the people get over their worries and problems, fears, and all that. So that's how a saint is. And then there is the concept of realized saint, who have reached a level where they are in communion with God itself.
Mhm. So that's excellent. Thank you. We have a question here. What language is the Bhagavad Gita written in? Is it the same as modern Indian language, and can it be easily read by modern readers?
Yes, it is written in Sanskrit.
Sounds.
And yeah,
Mhm.
Sanskrit is a beautiful language. It's very easy to learn Sanskrit, and it has the rules are very strict. So it's not like English, for example, where but is but and put is put. So in Sanskrit, if you write something, it's pronounced only one way. There's no other way to pronounce it. It is something like German.
Mhm.
German language takes a lot from Sanskrit, actually. Uh, just typical one example, the word no can be added anywhere in the Sanskrit sentence, as an example. Just like in German. In German, you can say, Ich gehen, ich nicht gehen, nicht ist gehen, ich gehen nicht. You can use the word no anywhere in
Mhm.
German. Same thing in Sanskrit. Sanskrit, once it is learned, it is easy to follow, but you have to have the vocabulary. So it's a huge vocabulary. Even if you can read it, you may not really understand the meaning of it. So in Chinmaya Mission, we have Sanskrit classes, and people learn.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's not easy to learn. It requires some effort to understand it.
So in our Sunday school, in our religious school, we teach Hebrew to our students, and they use it to get ready for their bar and bat mitzvahs. Is Sanskrit taught in the Chinmaya mission to your students?
Yes, we have classes. They do learn, and we have chanting competitions in which the whole Bhagavad Gita, we pick a chapter. In that year, the children will come and chant that chapter, and the judges will judge them. So they do learn. But as I said, understanding a sentence in Sanskrit is a different ball game altogether, because you may be able to chant it, but to understand the deep meaning of it requires some scholar. You have to be a scholar.
Right.
And our Swamiji knows, for example, he has done many years of studies on this, so he would understand. But you have to be knowledgeable to really be able to interpret things.
Great. Okay, well, I would say let's go back to your lecture, because I don't want to run out of time.
Okay, very good. Okay. Yeah, same here. I definitely want to do the meditation today, because
Right.
I'm sure
Great.
it will open up a different area of investigation for everybody. So let me continue with the presentation, and now I'm going to go into the Vedanta or Upanishads. And the Upanishads are 10 in number. So I just picked 2 Upanishads and a portion of the Upanishads to teach something, just to show you the kind of thing that is taught in an Upanishad and how it is applied in your life. So the whole Vedantic teachings are all very practical. These are not empty philosophy where you're talking about some abstract concepts. These are extremely practical things. And modern scientific research, which is a completely another field in which I have given some few talks on that too. The correlation of these topics with modern scientific research in neurology and so on is simply amazing to study. And I will briefly mention some of those things at the end for you to study it further. So one of the great Upanishads is called Taittiriya Upanishad. And here is a copy of Taittiriya Upanishad. This Chinmaya Mission publishes every Upanishads. And Swami Chinmayananda has written the commentary on all this from Shankaracharya's commentary. So the Taittiriya Upanishad contains a dialogue between Bhrigu, who is a great saint. Later on, he became a great saint, the disciple, and his father, who is also his teacher, called Varuna. So Bhrigu asks his teacher, "Revered teacher, please teach me Brahman, the supreme consciousness." I mentioned what Brahman is. It is the highest god of Vedanta. Varuna says, "Crave to know well that from which these beings are born. Practice meditation in silence, and you will know." So Bhrigu goes back after meditating for a long time, deeply, experiences his full physical body. From the inside, he experiences his whole body, and he comes back to the teacher and says, "Oh, now I know the body to be Brahman." Varuna tells him, "Go back, practice meditation in silence, and you will know." He basically told him, "No, your body is not Brahman." And then Varuna repeatedly sends back his student into meditation till in the end, Bhrigu experiences all 5 sheaths of the human manifestation. The 5 sheaths are food, life energy, mind, intellect, and bliss. So I will explain what these are. These are called the 5 sheaths or the Panchakosha. From here, the concept of Panchakosha has being taught in this Upanishad. See, it's a very specific knowledge It's not abstract. And to understand this, food sheath is the body. The first that he experienced the body to be Brahman, that is called the food sheath. That's called food because this body is born out of food. We were all a small baby once. How did we become so big? By eating food, nothing else, right? We ate food and we became so big. So we are basically made of food. The bread that you ate, the banana that you ate became you, effectively. And you are food, you're made of food, and you are food for somebody else for tomorrow. So when we die, we become food for some other organisms. In the forest, this happens very easily. When a deer goes around the forest, it eats all the leaves. When it dies, it becomes fertilizer for the same tree which it was eating from. So this is the food sheath. This is made up of bones, ligaments, tissues, blood, and so on. This is the food sheath. Then comes the life energy sheath. This is a little difficult for people to understand. This is what is called the prana or life energy. In Chinese medicine, they call it qi, for example. In Japanese, they call it ki, reiki, you must have heard. Life energy, there are 5 life energies, and we are sustained by this. This life energy is an intelligent energy. And it is similar to electricity. So the electricity in this room, for example, is responsible for almost everything that is running here. The Zoom call is running because of electricity, but it's a hidden energy. It is not seen. But the life energy in us is different from electricity in the sense that it is an intelligent energy. And what that means is that the intelligence in the case of electricity is in the toaster. Your bread does not get burnt because the toaster knows when to pop the bread. It is not the electricity that is intelligent. In our case, the life energy is an intelligent energy. What that means is that if you enhance life energy in your body, it does the healing by itself. It does not need instructions. The reason we fall sick, a large percentage of our illnesses is because of lack of life energy. That is what yoga does for you. So yogic postures, breathing practices increase life energy in us. And life energy is intelligent, so it heals you by itself. I will give a little exercise at the end to show you life energy, how you can experience life energy in an indirect way. But let me finish the other sheaths. The mind sheath is nothing but the thoughts that we have, the thought engine that we have. And the intellect is the one that makes decisions on the thoughts. Should I have a coffee or should I not have a coffee? The intellect makes the decision. And the bliss sheath is the last layer is of bliss, where once we pierce that sheath, then we are happy without a cause. It's a causeless happiness. It's a happiness or complete satisfaction. A realized saint lives in that state where he doesn't want anything else. He's just happy. So now a little experiment with all of you, just to demonstrate the concept of life energy. And Bhrigu, when he went for his meditation, what did he notice in his meditation when he came to life energy? I want to show you an example of that, okay? So I'll briefly quit the presentation so we can do this little test exercise here, okay? So just try to follow me. I will move a little back so that I can show you what I'm doing. Let's first, you do this with me, and then I will explain something about this, okay? So what I want you to do is just take your arms up If you don't have the space, you can just take it up like this. It's fine, anywhere. Just take it up, and you can keep your eyes closed or you can look straight ahead. Don't look at your hands. And I want you to slowly bring your arms down to the sides, paying attention to the direction in which your fingers are pointing at every moment. And I want you to ask yourself a question. When your arms become horizontal, did you know that they became horizontal? And when they started pointing towards the floor, did you know that they were pointing towards the floor? Okay. If you brought your arms down all the way, now I want to ask you the question. Give me a thumbs up if you knew the position of your arms throughout this movement. Could you feel the position of your arms? Could you make out where they were pointing? Yes? Good. Everybody is going to say yes to that. Now just pause for a moment and think about this. You knew where your fingers were pointing without looking. It basically means your arm has got like a GPS system, which is giving the feedback to the brain that where I am pointing right now. And the only connection with your hand, with your arm, is your shoulder joint. And there is, if you open up the shoulder joint and look, there is nothing there which is measuring this, is measuring an angle or something. So where is this knowledge coming from? This knowledge is coming from the life energy that is there in you. And people try to explain this by using things like, oh, there are these structures inside Golgi and all. You'll read about it, you can read about it, but if you pause a little bit and think about it, it's an amazing piece of information that you're getting. And there is a neurological term for this. It is called proprioception. In neurology, it's called proprioception. The proprioception, now we did this experiment with our hand, but if you close your eyes now and imagine your whole body, you know where your whole body is. Not just your hand. You know where your head is, where your legs are. You know that you're sitting in an upright position. And you know this instantaneously. It cannot be that every part of your body has got a GPS system which is locating you in space. Your nerves locate you that they are there. They are signaling you that they are there, but the location, the actual location. There is yet another term called interoception, which is how do you feel just now? So when you go to the doctor asks, how do you feel? You say, I feel good, except I have a little pain in my thumb. In one instant, you know it. The whole body is scanned in an instant, and you can tell whether you're feeling good or not feeling good. And if you're not feeling good, where you're feeling good. This is coming from your subtle body in which there is this life energy. And when you do deep meditation, these energies can be actually felt and controlled. That is how, if you have seen some of the great yogis do all these feats, which are amazing, like going underwater and remaining for several hours. That is how they do it. But that's not the goal. I just want to bring out that we have these faculties in us already. And that's what this Upanishad is trying to point out. Okay. Now, Tirza had told me that everybody likes stories. So this beautiful story, this question is often asked by even our own children in Chinmaya Mission, that why are we doing all these rituals, worship, temples, prayers, and all these things when ultimately only knowledge is important. That is knowledge of the Upanishads. We say that's the highest. Then why do you need all these other things? Why can't we just go to that knowledge straight? And then to explain this, the story is told. The story of the sixth idli is told in Vedantic circles. If you want to know what's idli, you ask any Indian, they will tell you. Every Indian knows what idli is. Idli is what you see here in the picture, is a rice cake, which is a popular breakfast item in India, mainly in the southern part of India. So the story goes like this. A villager went to the city for some business. And when he woke up in the morning, he felt very hungry. So he went to this small restaurant on the roadside, and he went to the owner of the restaurant and said, "I'm very hungry. Can you give me something to satisfy my hunger?" The owner said, "Oh, we have hot idlis being made. One idli is 1 rupee. The rupee is the Indian currency. So just go sit down and we'll give you idli." So the villager sat down. He ordered 1 idli first. It was not enough to satisfy his hunger. So he ordered 1 more idli. Still not enough. He went on ordering till the 6th idli. When he ate the 6th idli, his hunger was satisfied. So he finished up and he started walking out, and he gave 1 rupee to the hotel owner and started to leave. The hotel owner said, "You ate 6 idlis, you need to pay 6 rupees. Then he said, "See, I asked you to give me something that will satisfy my hunger. Only the 6th idli satisfied my hunger. So I'll pay you only for that." See, this is the attitude of the Hindu teachings, is for the ultimate teaching to have its effect, you have to go through the preparatory phase. And the ultimate teaching cannot do its job unless you have gone through this cleansing process. Because our mind has to be ready for that teaching. Otherwise, it will reject it. It will not have the respect for it, or it will argue against it. So all these other practices like devotion, love of God, and all these practices of yoga, meditation, all these things are preparing you for the highest knowledge, just like the 5 idlis prepared for the 6th idli. And somebody else cannot eat the 5 idlis for you. You have to eat the 5 idlis, then only the 6th idli will satisfy your hunger. So this story is often used to explain why we need all this whole system. The system has been designed for that. I hope you enjoyed that story. Now, we don't have much time. I'll move on to the next Upanishad. Kena Upanishad. Now, this is laying a foundation for our meditation right now. So the expanded awareness meditation. This Upanishad will lay the foundation for it. So I will quickly go through this. I wish I had more time because this is a very fascinating discussion, the Kena Upanishad. The Kena Upanishad starts with the question, directed by whom does the mind land upon objects? It starts like that. And it goes a little further, and then verse number 5, which is one of the beautiful verses from the Upanishads, asks us to think about something very deep. And this verse goes like this. Yanmanasana manute yena hurmano matam. Which means that which we cannot feel with the mind. So that means when we say that, we are always talking about the Brahman or the super conscious principle or Satchidananda. That which we cannot feel with the mind. Yanmanasana manute. That which we cannot feel with the mind. See, the mind can feel a lot of things. The mind can analyze a lot of things. When you make a trip to the Bahamas, you plan so many things: which hotel to book, which flight to take, what time departure, arrivals, do we need to book a car? The mind does a lot of good things, a lot of work for you, but it cannot reach that. The Upanishad tells us that which we cannot feel with the mind, yena hurmanomatam, but because of which they say that the mind can feel. That which the mind cannot feel, but because of which the mind is able to plan the trip to the Bahamas. Without the presence of that, the mind is just dead matter. That is what this is telling us. That which we cannot feel with the mind, but because of which they say that the mind can feel. This is Brahman. So Brahman is the root of everything, without which everything is jadam. In Sanskrit, the word jadam is used. Jadam means just matter, inanimate matter which can do nothing by itself. Without the enlivening of the Brahman, nothing can do anything in this world. And Saint Francis of Assisi said it beautifully: the one you are looking for is the one who is looking. This is something like the eye cannot turn and look at itself. The mind cannot look at that because the mind is enlivened by that itself. So the question is, how do we discover that? We discover it through only silence. The Vedantic techniques talk about Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, or listening to people, listening to talks, listening to wise people or saints and sages, listening to what they have to say, Mananam, pondering over it, and finally, Nididhyasanam, or being silent. Only in silence this will reveal itself. A connection with modern research, which I have mentioned, modern field of hard problem of consciousness. David Chalmers, he's a physicist actually from Australia. He put this concept forward. He gave an actual name to it, hard problem of consciousness. Addresses this mystery of our human existence. What is the hard problem of consciousness? It is that our consciousness is not just a dead consciousness. There is a full experience associated with it. So one of the ways to understand this is, if you have a self-driven car, nowadays there are all these Tesla and all that drive by itself. And let's say there's no driver also, and it just drives and goes somewhere. Did it enjoy that experience? You enjoy. You drive to a beautiful place, you enjoy the experience, and you tell your friends about it. You may write an essay about it. That is the hard problem of consciousness. You cannot imagine any AI system or robotic system that can have that actual experience that we are having. You can read more about hard problem of consciousness. It is a very fascinating topic nowadays, very popular topic in all big spirituality conferences, neurological conferences, trying to discover from where this experience of ours is coming. How does somebody write poetry? How did Michelangelo created the ceiling of Sistine Chapel? Would a robot think about doing that? Just think about that. How much of our consciousness you give to a robot, will it one day decide to create the Sistine Chapel? Obviously not. It has to be programmed to do everything that it does. But we human beings have this, and that's called the hard problem of consciousness. Our consciousness is very unique and fascinating to explore. There's a lot of mystery in it. So with this, Kena Upanishad, I want to go into the meditation. The meditation will take around 10 minutes. I hope that's okay, Tirs.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Sounds great.
So very quickly, I'll tell you what is expanded awareness. Generally, our awareness is the awareness that we normally use in life, like the one you're using just now, is aware of only one thing at a time. You're aware of this conference that is happening right now. You're not aware of the temperature around you, for example, or you're not aware of something else happening in the other room. That is because the mind is involved. When the mind is involved, the mind can only pay attention to one thing at a time. But your real awareness, which is deep inside you, the core awareness, can basically be aware of everything at the same time. And that is called God's awareness. God is aware of everything at the same time. The practice of expanded awareness is to practice to be aware of more than one thing in a very deliberative practice to sort of train us to go back to what we call the choiceless awareness. The choiceless awareness is that part of your awareness which has no choice except to be aware. So the mind presents something to it. The mind is watching a Netflix show. It presents it to the awareness. The awareness has to be aware of it. It has no choice. The mind starts to eat dinner. You're aware of the dinner now. But you cannot not be aware. Whatever the mind picks, you have to be aware of that. So there is a part of your awareness which is choiceless. When we are aware of more than one thing, then we sort of drop the mind because the mind is incapable of handling more than one thing. And we start getting into our core awareness. So that's what this meditation is about. So for this, what I will ask you is just you fold your fingers like this and keep it wherever, on your table, on your lap. And just close your eyes. We will start by being aware of your breath. Just relax into it. Don't take it as a task or something. Just be aware in a relaxed way of your breath. In any way your breath is happening.
Yeah, just started.
And now I want you to be aware of your fingers, which are interlocked with each other. This knowledge is available to you. This knowledge is available to you in a great detail, actually. For example, you know that your two first fingers or index fingers are touching each other, and the index finger of one hand is touching the middle finger of the other hand. If you interlock your fingers, this knowledge is available to you. Be aware of this knowledge. We are not asking you to analyze it. Just be aware of the knowledge that is coming to you from these interlocked fingers. And now try to be aware of your breath also at the same time. Try to sort of expand your awareness to include both of these. How to do it, I cannot explain. Deep inside, you know how to do this because we are all the same consciousness. Try to be aware of both of these things. And now I want you to add a third component, the temperature around your body, everywhere. How do you feel around your head? Does it feel cold, warm, or neutral? Around the shoulders, around your torso, your left arm, right arm, your abdominal region, your left leg, your right leg. Some parts feel cold, some parts feel warm. The overall envelope of temperature around your body, just be aware of this. And now try to expand your awareness to be aware of all three. The temperature around your body, your fingers interlocked, and the breath. For the next 2 minutes, try to enclose these three things in your awareness by just relaxing into it and noticing all three of them. Initially, you may be doing it one after the other, but then there may be a moment when you see all three of them or two of them together. That's a beautiful moment. In Zen, they use the word satori for this, or a lightning flash of enlightenment. When you realize your true awareness, how expansive it is, and how beautiful and liberating it is. Next 2 minutes in silence, just try to experience all three. Om Tat Sat. You can slowly open your eyes now. I hope you enjoyed that meditation. So what is the key here? This meditation was trying to show us that we are not this small entity that we think we are. We are capable of much more than this. In the Upanishadic view of God, God's awareness or consciousness is aware of everything at the same time. And the intelligence is so high that it creates anything that gets imagined instantaneously. So that is the concept of God in Upanishad. The awareness that is expanded everywhere, is omniscient, present everywhere, and the intelligence that took 2 years to create this iPhone, maybe in design meetings and redesigns took so long, is instantaneously created from the mind of God when God thinks about any creation. And in Upanishad, there is a concept of manifested and unmanifested state. So this phone existed in unmanifest state because the creation already knew the possibility of everything. So for example, the atoms and the semiconductors and silicon with a valency of 4, those of you who are scientists know this, that the valency of 4 in silicon is what allows it to be a semiconductor, which allows the creation of the p-n junction, which allows the creation of transistors, which allows electronics. So it existed in an unmanifest form in the atom itself. So that is the concept of unmanifested intelligence, that the intelligence is so high that it can foresee everything and create the beginnings of it, so that things get created from that. So by doing meditation, this is the practical part, we connect with that higher intelligence, and all the solutions for life's problems are available there. So that is the power of meditation. So it is not a relaxation technique. That's why the last meditation that we did in the first class was more for physical benefits. This one is very high. The expanded awareness meditation starts to step into the realm of the mystic and the higher vibrations of God itself. So that's the reason why I want to introduce that. So
Great.
I'm done with my talk. And if you have any questions, I don't know, Tirza can know
Yes.
how much time we have. So,
Thank you so much. And thank you for the meditation this evening. That was wonderful. My daughter didn't want to be in the picture, but she joined, and it was fun to have her join. I got a question from your story of the sixth idli. The
yes.
question is, does it teach that ritual is necessary for proper learning? And is that a story that's taught to students at the mission?
Yes, yes, of course. I myself learned it at the mission from one of my teachers.
Mhm.
Yeah, see, the Hindu system assumes that everybody is a beginner, but it is the choice of the person. So if a person feels that, they have gone beyond that, then they talk to their teacher and say that, I think I'm ready for the next step. And usually it is the teacher who will say that, now you need to start getting into something higher. So that is the process in, for example, in a place like Chinmaya Mission. Our Swamiji here was at one time what is called a Brahmachari. That means there are levels of graduation, right? And then the teacher, his teacher would decide that, okay, now you're ready for the next step. That doesn't mean they give up rituals. That means they look at the rituals as not, it's necessary but not sufficient. They need to do something else. They need to be contemplation. They need to do meditation. They will add other things to their practices. But the rituals are never treated with disrespect, even among the highest saints, realized saints, because remember that the rituals are done for some of the great gods like Shiva and Vishnu, who are real. Shiva is supposed to be real. He's supposed to be even now living in the Himalayas. And people claim some of them have met his human form. There are many, many stories in the Hindu scriptures about this, how Shiva affects you and how he manifests in your life and so on. Some of the great saints, some of the greatest saints, they talk about humility. That the moment we start thinking that we know too much, then that's the start of our downfall. The ultimate humility. Some of the greatest saints will always be very humble, and because they know that the higher superconscious principle is always something which we can never grasp. It is like trying to grasp water, as they say. You cannot grasp water, how much ever you try. You cannot grasp the superconscious. Somebody called it like falling into an endless pit. There is no bottom for it. And you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you will see that, oh, what I knew yesterday was nothing. Today I know even more. And tomorrow I will know even more how deep and big this is.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the attitude of the saint also. So they never disrespect anything. Rituals, let them continue. But you keep adding, you keep growing,
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for tonight. We got a lot out of it, I think, speaking for the attendees and the wonderful questions that were sent. And thank you to for our participants tonight. And Rajan, thank you so much for being available if people have additional questions. It's Rajan, Rajan 007, like James Bond, @gmail.com. And was really delightful. And let's find ways to continue this conversation and dialogue.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here and giving me an audience. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, just send me an email and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Great. We will.
Namaste, everybody.
Namaste.